Oh, how's it going, everybody? So, we are back for another edition of All In, where I'll pick a band, I'll listen to their entire discography, and I come on here and I discuss it. So, in case you're joining this show for the first time, the rules go like this. The band in question must have at least 5 or more original studio albums, although cover albums can count. I typically do not include live tracks or acoustic tracks unless they were original in that form. And yeah, so let's go from there. So this week, in case you haven't saw on your screen, AC/DC. So yeah, they've had a hell of a career. They're still performing live, even after a few member changes here and there. But they started off. Their discography. It's kind of confusing when you think about it. So their first 2 albums were released in Australia only. So they had the Australian version of High Voltage in '75, and TNT, which was also in '75. But when you include them 2 albums and up to what they did recently, their discography spans from 1975's High Voltage, the Australian version, all the way up to Power Up in 2020. So yeah, pretty recently there that they released some new material. I don't know if they're going to release anything newer than that or not. We'll just have to wait and see. But anyhow, so getting to the point here. So yeah, like I said, their first 2 albums were Australian only. And then we get to 1976 with the American version of High Voltage. Now, the thing about the Australian only albums, a lot of the tracks on those 2 albums we didn't get until later. Like, a lot of 74 Jailbreak is like half of High Voltage, the Australian version. And then a lot of those tracks on that album we didn't get until 74 Jailbreak. And then, of course, the TNT album, I think there's a track on there that's on the Jailbreak album, too. And then all the rest of the tracks on them couple of albums we didn't get then, you can either get them on the Backtracks box set or the Bonfire box set. So I kind of tried to put them in order as best as I can when I did the playback, but I guess we'll start the discussion at the international version of High Voltage. So yeah, I do have most of these on physical. So here we start off with It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll. Real good song. Another good one from there, The Jack, Live Wire, TNT, Done Dirt Cheap. And then you got Can I Sit Next to You Girl, which, interesting story behind that song is, it was their very first single, and they had a different lead singer from Bon Scott, and he didn't even sound like Bon Scott. Like no, it kind of sounded weird if you ask me. And then, of course, Little Lover, She's Got Balls, the title track, High Voltage there at the very end. But I would say It's a Long Way to the Top and The Jack are like your 2 biggest songs. Oh, and TNT, I would say those are the 3 biggest tracks on this one. But yeah, pretty good album. And then, staying in 1976, they released this album. I almost put it upside down there. So you've got Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap. And of course, here we start off with the title track. You know, Love at First Feel. Big Balls. My God, that's a hilarious song. And then Rocker, Problem Child. There's going to be some rockin'. Ain't No Fun If You're Waiting to Be a Millionaire. You kind of got, I don't know if you call it a power ballad, but Ride On, kind of a slower song. And then you end it with Squealer. So, yeah, I would say the title track and Big Balls would be the 2 big tracks on this one. But again, another good album. So then, we move on to 1977, Let There Be Rock. So here we start off with Go Down. We have Dog Eat Dog. It's not a Ted Nugent cover. Let There Be Rock, obviously the title track. Bad Boy Boogie, Problem Child, which they included that on the last album too, so it's kind of weird how they included the same song on both albums. You got Overdose, Hell in a Bad Place to Be, and Whole Lotta Rosie, which I would say a title track is pretty big on this one, and A Whole Lotta Rosie I think would probably be their biggest song on this one. So, very good stuff right there. And then we're moving on to 1978. So we have the album Power Age, and I kind of feel like they had a slight slump with this album, but it's still pretty good. I mean, there's not as many, super popular songs on this as like the last three there, but here you start off with Rock and Roll Damnation, love that tune. You have Down Payment Blues, Give Me a Bullet, Riff Raff, Sin City, that's another one I like off of this. What's Next to the Moon? Gone Shootin', Up to My Neck in You, and Kicked in the Teeth. But what can I say? It's AC/DC. Gotta love it. So then we move on to, I would say, their biggest album up to this point in time. You have Highway to Hell. So here we have the title track, obviously, followed by Walk All Over You, Beating Around the Bush, Get It Hot. Oh, I'm kind of going out of order here, the way they got these listed. Let's start over again. So Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, Walk All Over You, Touch Too Much, Beating Around the Bush, Shot Down in Flames, that's a good one, Get It Hot, If You Want Blood, You've Got It, Love Hunger Man, and Night Prowler. And, yeah, I would say, oh wow, there's a lot of good ones on this. So, obviously, Highway to Hell, I would say their most popular song on this, their commercially most popular song thus far. And then you've got Girls Got Rhythm, and then you've got Touch Too Much, Shot Down in Flames. So yeah, those four, I would think, are pretty big songs off of this. And of course, the sad tale of what happens to Bon Scott after this album. Yeah, sadly, we ended up losing him in a car crash. But I often wonder, like, if he was still alive today, would Back in Black be as successful as it was? Would it have been more successful? I don't know. Alright, so moving on. So now we hit the 80s, and this is where Brian Johnson takes place of Bon Scott. And again, I wasn't around, or I wasn't around, or I was just being born at this time, but I'm sure, like, people were thinking, oh, AC/DC won't get any better than this without Bon Scott. Well, in 1980, they released this album. Very legendary. I would almost consider this to be like one of those, if you were to make a rock starter kit for people that don't listen to much rock but want to get into it, this is definitely a good album to start with. So, here with Back in Black, you start off with Hell's Bells, Shoot the Thrill, What You Do for Money, Honey, Giving a Dog a Bone, Let Me Put My Love Into You, of course the title track, Back in Black, and then probably their most popular and I would say overplayed song of all time, You Shook Me All Night Long, then followed by Have a Drink on Me, then you got Shake a Leg, and Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. And yeah, this whole CD is all bangers, I think. Like, any of this could have been a single, honestly. But yeah, I would say probably their most popular is definitely You Shook Me All Night Long. Hell's Bells is right up there. Back in Black, Have a Drink on Me, Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution. Like, just half of it's like real popular to begin with. But yeah, real good album. Definitely recommend it. So then, moving on, 1981, they follow up with For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. So we start off with the title track, and then I Put My Finger on You, and then Let's Get It Up, Inject the Venom, Snowballed, Evil Walks, COD, Breaking the Rules, Night of Long Knives, and Spellbound. Now, I think like the first three tracks were definitely a good follow-up to Back in Black, and then I feel like it dropped off a little bit after that, But yeah, I mean, For Those About to Rock, definitely a good anthem. Damn good song. And yeah, this ain't a bad album at all. So, now we move on to a couple that I have on download now, but they really didn't get much exposure as far as, I mean, at the time I don't remember, but I mean, they, at least in later years, you never heard about these albums. So here we got 1983's Flick of a Switch. So, here you got the songs Rising Power, This House is on Fire, Flick of a Switch, Nervous Shakedown, Landslide, Guns for Hire, which I love that song, that's a good one. Deep in the Hole, that's what she said. A Bedlam in Belgium, Badlands, and Brian Shake. But I mean, it's AC/DC. I mean, what's not to like about it? So in '84, they released this EP right here, which I was just discussing toward the beginning of the video. It's got the songs "Jailbreak," "You Ain't Got a Hold on Me," "Show Business," "Soul Stripper," and "Baby Please Don't Go," which these 5 songs showed up on the first 2 Australian-only albums, and then we didn't get them until this album right here, till this little '74 Jailbreak EP. But it's a nod back to their early stuff, even in 1984. So yeah, that's pretty good. So then we move on to '85 with "Fly on the Wall," and again, it's another one that never really got much love, I guess. And I never did buy the physical copy of it. But, so here you got the title track, "Fly on the Wall." Then you got "Shake Your Foundations," which, that song I did know because I have heard it on Who Made Who. And then you got "First Blood," "Danger," "Sink the Pink," which I think that was also on Who Made Who, if I'm not mistaken. You got "Playing with Girls," "Stand Up," "Hell High Water," "Back in Business," "Send for the Man." So, I mean, the album was alright. It was mediocre for AC/DC standards. I didn't care for it as much as the others before it, so then we move on. We have "Who Made Who," which AC/DC was kind of odd about doing this. Like, they never really would do a true greatest hits album. However, they would do a soundtrack and put a lot of the greatest hits on it. So, here you have "Who Made Who," which is original to this album. They bring back "You Shook Me All Night Long," and then you got "DT," which is an instrumental original to this. Oh yeah, it does have "Sink the Pink." You got "Ride On," which was from the earlier days. "Hell's Bells," "Shake Your Foundations," like I said. "Chase the Ace," which I believe this is original to this album. And then we end with "For Those About to Rock, We Salute You." So, I mean, this is about as close to a greatest hits compilation as you're going to get from the 80s, basically. But it's another good album. Like, if you're introducing someone to AC/DC, that would be a good starting point. So then we move on to 1988's "Blow Up Your Video." And here again, not really a favorite for everybody, but if you like AC/DC, you can just put it in shuffle or play the album, no big deal. So we got "Heat Seeker," "That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll," "Mean Streak," "Go Zone," "Kissin' Dynamite," "Nick of Time," "Something for Nothing," "Rough Stuff," "Two's Up," and "This Means War." And out of this album, I like "Heat Seeker," I like "That's the Way I Want to Rock and Roll," and "This Means War." So, yeah, so "Blow Up Your Video." So that ends the 80s right there. And so we're going to move on to 1990. And here we go. I would say this is a comeback album for them. The Razor's Edge from 1990. And I feel like they came back with a vengeance on this one. So here we start with "Thunderstruck," a really fucking good song. And then we follow it up with "Fire Your Guns," "Money Talks," "The Razor's Edge," and then they tried their hand at Christmas music, "Mistress for Christmas," and it actually worked. And then you got "Rock Your Heart Out," making up side 1, if you had the tape. And then side 2, you start off with "Are You Ready?" "Got You by the Balls," "Shot of Love," "Let's Make It," "Goodbye," and "Good Riddance," and "Bad Luck," and "If You Dare." And yeah, again, like if you're starting off on AC/DC, definitely got to have this in the collection, for sure. But "Thunderstruck," that I would say, that's almost right up there with "You Shook Me All Night Long" as far as popularity. So, I would say, like, with their top, I would say their top 3 popular albums would be "Highway to Hell," "Back in Black," and "Razor's Edge." Definitely a damn good album, worth checking out, worth purchasing. So then, we're moving on to 1995. They take a 5-year studio break. In between, however, they did record the song "Big Gun," which is on the Last Action Hero soundtrack. And then later on, you can get it on their box set backtracks. And then they segue to this, "Ball Breaker." And hearing this album, I would say, like, you know, if every band had their horny album, this would be it for AC/DC. So here we have Hard as a Rock, Cover You in Oil, which were both decent singles off of the album. We move on with the Führer, Boogeyman, The Honey Roll, Burning Alive, Hail Chaser, Love Bomb, Caught with Your Pants Down, Whiskey on the Rocks, and ending with the title track, Ball Breaker. And yeah, I would say like Hard as a Rock was like their most popular song on there. Got played all over the place when it came out, despite the fact that, you know, hair bands were out and grunge was in. And I would think that, like, I think AC/DC kind of fits in more with the hair band era, so to speak, because they were around before the hair band era, but I think their sound kind of fits in more with it. But despite grunge being in full swing by '95, this did have some success to it. So they're kind of a band that they hold their own, and they didn't really change their sound no matter what the era was. Like I said, before hair bands they started, and then of course they survived the hair band era, they survived the grunge era, they even survived the nu metal era. So yeah, I would say this is one of my lesser favorite albums, but definitely a few good ones there. So then we skip another 5 years, and we move on to Stiff Upper Lip. So at this point, we're in 2000 now. At this point, we're in the nu metal era. So here we have the title track, and that's what they debuted with. And then we move on to Meltdown, House of Jazz, Hold Me Back, Safe in New York City, Can't Stand Still, Can't Stop Rock and Roll, Satellite Blues, Damned, Come and Get It, All Screwed Up, and Give It Up. So yeah, obviously Stiff Upper Lip, that was the lead single, the breakout single to this. And then I remember Safe in New York City was a single, but never really caught on. Satellite Blues was also a single, but I think I like that song better than Stiff Upper Lip, in my opinion. But here again, AC/DC, here we go. So, still in the 2000s, and we wait for a while, and we get this album, Black Ice. So, like I said, 2008, and what I remember, what was unique about this album is when they released it, when they first released it, it was a Walmart exclusive, at least in the States. I don't know how they did it in other countries, but yeah, in the States you could only get it at Walmart. And what's crazy is you had a choice of 4 different album covers, which the original was the red lettering, and then you had the yellow lettering, the ice blue lettering, and I chose the white lettering. So I think now if you were to buy the album new, it would just be the red lettering. So this is kind of like a limited edition case. So here we have Rock and Roll Train, Strikes on Fire, Big Jack, I love that song. Anything Goes, War Machine, no, that's not a Kiss remake, Smash and Grab, Spoiling for a Fight, Wheels, Decibel, Stormy May Day, She Looks Like Rock and Roll, Money Made, Rock and Roll Dream, Rockin' All the Way, and the title track, Black Ice. And yeah, I would say this has got to be the longest album they did. Like, it's compiled of 15 tracks. But their earlier stuff, I would say it was about 8 or 9 tracks, give or take. About 35 to 45 minutes per album. Maybe 40 minutes at the max on the earlier ones. But this one here, yeah, definitely their longest album they ever did. Okay, so then we move on. This is all the physicals I have. But we move on to Rock or Bust from 2014. Yeah, so they're still going at this point. So here we have Rock or Bust, the title track. Play Ball. Rock and Roll, yeah, Rock the Blues Away, Misadventure, Dogs of War, Get Some Rock and Roll Thunder, Hard Times, Baptism by Fire, Rock the House, Sweet Candy, and Emission Control. And here, surprisingly, they actually kept this album short. It clocks in at only 35 minutes, so they're kind of going back to, like, the old school length of albums, basically. But I think a lot of these bands are doing that because of, like, the resurgence of vinyl. You know, if you can fit your whole album on, like, one vinyl, you can sell it cheaper. Where, like, these bands, they do these 60-minute albums, and they do their own double vinyl, then you have to pay twice as much for it. So maybe that's what these bands are starting to go for here. But, again, it's AC/DC. What can I say? It's not the best album, but it didn't suck. So then we move on to their latest album, Power Up, which came out just recently in 2020, as we were locked down during COVID. So here we start off with the track Realize, followed by Rejection, and then you've got the single Shot in the Dark. And no, that's not an Ozzy remake either. That's their own song, Shot in the Dark. And then you got Through Mists of Time, Kick You When You're Down, Witch's Spell, and then we go on to side 2 if you have the vinyl. Demon Fire, Wild Reputation, No Man's Land, Systems Down, Money Shot, well that could be sexual, and Code Red. So here again, they actually kept it down to 40 minutes. So they're, again, old school. I mean, if you like old school music, or if you like new music with the old school feel to it, these last 2 albums are definitely pretty good for that. So again, kind of like Rock or Bust. It's decent. I mean, I can't say there's an AC/DC album I hate. And then, I forgot to show you this. So this is the 2 CD set of AC/DC Live, which released in '92. And it's got, like, all the good tracks on it from that point on. And a lot of good artwork here. So, yeah, I forgot to do that at the beginning. I forgot to do this at the beginning of the video, but I can't really pinpoint when I started to listen to AC/DC. I would say a lot of it would have to do with when my brother got his first stereo with a CD player, and he had bought this album, Who Made Who, and like all the radio stations do, he played the crap out of You Shook Me All Night Long. And of course, my dad had the 1 cassette version of this album, which I think you can get that on single disc also. They just, trim the fat a little bit. They cut it down to like the more popular songs. So I'd say, but between my brother and my dad, that's when I really started to listen to AC/DC. But okay, so rankings. So we're gonna break it down to eras here. So we're going to do 70s era, which obviously was the Bon Scott era. And then we'll do 80s era, which was the start of Brian Johnson. So yeah, there's enough albums from the 80s to do that. And then we're going to do 90s to now. And yeah, I think that's how we'll do it. So, 70s AC/DC. This is a toughie. I liked all the albums from back then. I mean, yeah, Highway to Hell, definitely the most commercially successful out of them. But I don't know. I almost have to go with High Voltage, the international version. Because, I mean, that's right where it all started, And then, so we move on to the 80s. And I'm going to have to go with the most commercially successful, Back in Black. And that was the first full AC/DC album I ever purchased. Loved it. Still love it. I'm even wearing the shirt. So yeah, that's my favorite album from there. Least favorite from the 70s, I forgot to mention that. And again, hard choice. I don't really hate any of them. But I might have to go with Power Age on that one. Now, 80s least favorite. I would almost have to go Fly on the Wall on that one. And then we'll go 90s to now. And I don't know. I would have to say The Razor's Edge, definitely. And yes, it's most commercially successful. But I would say a close runner-up would be Black Ice, believe it or not. I mean, for a later in career release, I mean, they had a lot of good solid tracks on it. I mean, yeah, the album was a little bit long. That's what she said. But, all in all, there was a lot of good shit on it, Like, I would have to say Big Jack was my favorite song off of that one. So yeah, and then coming to the one that I disliked the most, I can't say I hate it, but the one I didn't like the most, I don't know, I would say probably Rock or Bust. But all in all, awesome discography. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my take on the entire AC/DC discography. So, next video for All In, I'm going to hand it off to GMC, and I'm going to give you a hint. It's a solo artist who has been around since the 60s and is still touring today. Can you guess? Find out next time.